Brutal death, teen conviction, satanic cults and confessions that turned out to be manipulated. An inhuman murder from 1993 that broke all limits of cruelty. 3 individuals convicted in their youth served lengthy sentences before release, their convictions remaining unresolved. West Memphis experienced a case that came to be called West Memphis Three. 3 innocent 8-year-old boys were found brutally murdered, for which 3 teens were convicted who happened to be unaware of each other's existence. The conviction connected with the practice of Satanism shocked the whole nation, but even the families of victims believed the convicts were innocent. In the entire case, we will be referring to the West Memphis Three as WM3. The childhood and innocence was at its peak, but the fate was so tragic that Steve Branch, Christopher Byers, and James Michael Moore, all 8 years old, vanished one evening without leaving a trace of where they went and what happened to them. Their disappearance shocked the whole city of West Memphis, the 3 best friends who were referred to as happy youngsters. Chris was a bundle of energy. Steve, who used to still believe in Christmas and Easter Bunny, and Moore, who used to wear his Cub Scout uniform almost every day. Their fashion sense was ahead of time. On the evening of 5th of May 1993, kids were back from school and were out cycling to Robin Hood Hills. Steve left his home around 3:30, Chris left around 5:30 to go to Michael's house, and from there all of them left Moore's home around 6 p.m. as told by their parents. No one was worried about them based on their schedule, but when the clock started striking, more than 8 parents started to become uneasy when there was no trace of them. Struck with anxiety and worry, the families and police started searching for the missing boys. Chris was reported missing around 8:10 p.m, Michael was reported missing around 9:24 p.m, and Steve's absence was noticed by his mother around 9:25 p.m. after she was free from her work. The families and police started searching for them, but the night limited their search. Next day, the search resumed early in the morning in the hills of Robin Hood. Till afternoon, there were no traces of the boys. Around 2 p.m, the police spotted a black shoe floating in the drain. After searching, all 3 bodies were found dead tragically in a drainage ditch. The place they were found was one of the places parents forbid kids to go. Police and families believed they had crossed the pipe to go there. The location around the drainage was nothing more than unevenly grown woods, making it more scarier in the night. Crossing the pipe to reach there is quite surprising, as they were on their cycles. They must have carried the cycle while crossing the pipe. Their clothes had no traces of blood. It even showed they might have undressed themselves. The bodies had been stripped naked and hog-tied with their own shoelaces. Right ankles were tied to right wrists on their back, and so the left ankles and left wrists. Their clothes were found inside out in the creek, and some of them twisted around the sticks. 2 of the underwear were never rescued from the crime scene. The way 3 boys were killed, investigators suspected that it might be some satanic practice. Officer James Sudbury, the head investigator in the WM3 case, mentioned in his notes that they suspected the murder might be the work of a person who is involved in cult sacrifices. They made 2 lists of people of West Memphis involved in cult sacrifices and people who could have been involved in the murder. Steve Jones, a juvenile officer, mentioned he thought of a person who might be involved in the murder. The person whose name has already appeared in the crimes like shoplifting and vandalism. The person was Damien Eccles. Damien Eccles was the first name in both lists. Based on their belief, they suspected Eccles and arrested the teens Damien Eccles, aged 18, Jason Baldwin, aged 17, and Jesse Miskelly Jr., aged 16, were arrested in the brutal murder case of 3 kids. Eccles and Miskelly were previously arrested in vandalism and shoplifting, and Jason was well known for his temper and engaging in fistfights. Eccles and Baldwin were acquainted with Miskelly in school, but were not much close with him. Eccles and Baldwin were close friends and shared similar tastes in music and fiction. Eccles' family was poor. He rarely got to attend school. The teens got arrested on 11th of May. Police arrested them and took them to trial one at once. On 3rd of June 1993, police picked Jesse Miskelly to the police station at roughly around 9:45 for questioning. At 11 a.m., Jesse went through a polygraph test, and then for the first time, police taped Jesse's first confession at 2:44 p.m.
3 little boys were murdered. If you would, on that day, did you go to Robin Hood Woods?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And who did you go there with?
His confession proved that everything was done by 3 of them. Based on his confession, Baldwin and Echols were also arrested. After the confession was taped, a rumour started spreading about how ruthless the teens were and scared people of West Memphis about the satanic practices. The confessions made by Jesse seemed to have wrong details that didn't match the actual scene. Mr. Miskelly's attorney claimed that he was questioned when he was still a child, 16 years old, and was not accompanied by his parents and any attorney. The confession didn't match the details, still the opposition used them to charge Baldwin and Echols. Later, Jesse recanted and refused to testify against Baldwin and Echols. After that, the confession was barred from the trial. Although no physical evidence or motive tied them to crime, the teens were sentenced to life imprisonment and death. Jesse and Baldwin were sentenced to life imprisonment, and Echols was sentenced to death. Many celebrities like Johnny Depp, Eddie Vedder and Peter Jackson came into support of the West Memphis Three and became vocal supporters of the defendant. Many books and films covered the case. Their series was covered by a series of noteworthy events. Some people believed them, some didn't, but John Mark Byers, father of the victim Chris Byers, said he believes West Memphis Three are innocent.
This is not justice. None of the West Memphis Three's DNA was there.
Back in 1993, DNA analysis tools weren't yet sophisticated enough to handle complex cases. The evidence found in the case didn't testify the teens' presence, but also never proved they were innocent as well. Later in 2007, all the physical evidence went through another DNA test. DNA test results excluded the 3 men from the case, and DNA of another man was found, who is still unidentified. In 2011, they were released after signing Alford plea, a plea that allows the person to maintain their innocence and acknowledge that prosecutors have evidence that could result in their trial. Echols was on death row facing execution for the 3rd time, so they accepted the plea. Echols wrote a petition letter asking for another DNA test to identify the man who is actually behind the crime. However, the petition was denied by the judge. It's been 30 years since the West Memphis murder, but the case is still relevant. The 3 teens are living their lives, but are still trying hard to clear their names from the case and prove them innocent. They believe DNA tests can bring the person behind the brutal murder in front and throw him behind the bars. This can only bring justice to the 3 kids. Echols mentioned in his interview to a private channel that he is still in contact with the victims' parents, mostly with John Byers. He said they never knew the victims personally, but he really felt sorry for them. The victims are remembered through their cemeteries. The school, Weaver Elementary School, made a cemetery on its 20th anniversary in the remembrance of kids. West Memphis Three were arrested in the tragic murder of 3 kids. The case took many upholds, but the justice is still delayed. The teens allege they are innocent, and the conviction is wrong. They maintained their innocence and lastly were released free, but not proven innocent. The West Memphis Three are in contact with the victims' parents who believe they are innocent. The teens lost their precious 18 years in jail but are living their lives after jail. Echols has a family and is currently running a business. Jesse is the only one from WM3 to live in West Memphis closer to his father, and he is doing some carpentry work. Baldwin has moved to Seattle to live with his friends. He also has a part-time job at a law firm. Baldwin owns an apartment and driving license in Seattle.